All right, welcome back to the Roadmap to Retirement podcast. I'm delighted to be joined by Austin here, who, Austin, you asked that I would introduce you as the 401k superhero, and then you promised that I wouldn't actually say that, so I wanted to do it anyway. But Austin Spivey's been a great resource to us on everything 401k related, so we wanted to bring him on today to talk specifically more about 401k plans for small businesses and all the questions that we get and all the questions that Austin gets around the topic. Austin, I'll start by giving you a chance to introduce yourself how you would want to be introduced. Go ahead with that.
Just I can go by Dr. Austin Spite, anything like that. It's always fun to have a little creativity. No, I'm Austin Spite. I work for Human Interests, been here for 3 years, been in the industry, the benefits industry for, 11 years now. And yeah, just stuck with it. Hopefully hoping to help people. That's ultimately the goal here. Help people get something going and get to retirement.
All right, we love that. To jump right in, so the number one question that we get is like, why would I offer 401k? I think from the business owner perspective, there's that obvious answer that people rattle out about. It's going to help you with employee retention to offer any kind of benefit. So here's a 401k, do that. But what are some reasons that you see employers wanting to offer that plan?
Yeah, employers, I would say the number one reason is going to be taxes, right? That's the first step most employers see it as being a benefit to them. And they also get the perspective of this is going to help me with my employee retention and attraction, all that. That they understand that, they know that. I think that's been said enough. What I think that employers need to do is quantify what that means to them. So come up with a dollar amount of how much it costs to lose an employee and training, things like that. And then their own time, because a lot of these employers, when they lose an employee, they have to go fill that position themselves. A lot of small employers starting a 401k for the first time are in that position. So then they have to, quantify their own time spent on replacing the employee with their own work, finding new candidates, and so on and so forth. We've, like you said, it's been gone through. But yeah, the tax piece of this is huge. I've got an employer right now that's got $200,000 of profit, right? He needs to not pay taxes on that. And not every employer is in that boat, but it gives you some perspective.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think you can come at it from two different angles. You have the offering the plan to benefit the employees, but then of course there's this sort of selfish reason that a small business owner might want to do it, whether it's for their own tax benefit or to give themselves a retirement benefit. Can you talk a little bit about some of the things that an employer can do to set up a plan that really benefits them as the owner?
Yeah. Yeah. And we might jump ahead of ourselves a little bit because you can't really talk about setting up a plan for the first time and the primary beneficiary being the owner without talking about safe harbor.
Okay.
Because there's
Well,
really
let's
no
take a step
way.
back.
Yeah. There's really no way to set up a 401k that truly benefits an owner of a business or key employees of a business without setting it up in a safe harbor style. Now, we can jump into that now, or we can jump into it later. But that allows, in essence, it allows employers to get the owners, I should say, to get the max benefit from tax deductions, tax credits, tax savings, those
Okay.
sorts of things.
Well, let's go ahead
So,
and get right into it. What is a safe harbor plan and why do I need that?
yeah. So 401k safe harbor plan is really just called that because it has specific features that have to be on the plan. So we'll take a quick step back with a traditional 401k. If I'm the owner, I've got 9 employees and I put in the max. I put in $23,000 in the 401k plan, and everyone else only puts in $5, $10, or $100, or even $1,000. The IRS says compliance testing has to be done every year to ensure that I, as the owner, am not overly benefiting from the plan, right? It's supposed to be an employee benefit. That's why it's set up. And that's why the IRS allows the tax benefits associated with it. When that compliance testing is done, and again, I've hit the max and everyone else has done just a little bit, the IRS can be like, yeah, you're benefiting too much from this. So you're going to get a check back in the mail for 70%. We'll just throw that number out there of what you put in. And then that defeats the purpose for me as the owner. So that's a traditional 401k setup. Now, the safe harbor, one of the requirements is that it has to have a match on it. It's a very specific match formula. It's got to have a match. And if it's set up with that match and it's got the eligibility requirements that are associated with that, vesting schedules that are associated with that, the safe harbor plan, I can then do that 23,000 and nobody else has to put a dime in there. I get to keep all my money in the 401k at the end of the year. That compliance testing is considered null and void by the IRS because I'm offering a match. I'm incentivizing employees to do this. And now there's not much else I can do as an owner to get them enrolled. So the IRS says, I'm going to give you a break because you've done all you can. So that's, again, going back to your original question, how an owner maximizes benefit from a 401k plan is through setting it up in that safe harbor arrangement. There's obviously a little risk that can be maybe stressful for ownership in the sense that, okay, I have to offer a match. And if employees do take me up on this, now I gotta pay it. But at the end of the day, that match is a tax deduction. So you might be putting in $5,000 a year in match, but then that's $5,000 you're not paying taxes on. So it really works out to be $4,000, something along those lines. So sorry to get on all the boring numbers, but that's just the way it goes.
That's a thorough answer. I like that. So basically, we need to have the safe harbor thing in place. And once we do that, allows us to do profit sharing contributions into the employer plan. What are some things that you can do once that's satisfied?
Yeah. So once the match is satisfied, profit sharing is a discretionary contribution into a 401k plan. So you still have to, whenever that happens, there will be a compliance test run. It's a separate compliance test, but it is nonetheless something where the IRS is, again, trying to make sure that the ownership is not overly benefiting from something that was originally designed to benefit employees.
Okay.
That being said, there are ways with profit sharing to really maximize how much. Let's just say it's $100,000 profit share at the end of the year, just using a round number, or we'll say $10,000 because that might be more realistic. Traditionally, most employers, when they do this, they'll do it what's called pro rata. So it'll just be, okay, this employee has X dollar amount into this plan, they're going to get this, and so on and so forth. It just basically goes down the line. It's all very equal, all very fair, right? Whereas there's another method called new comparability profit sharing, where the ownership can get 70 to 80% of that $10,000. Whereas in pro rata, the ownership may only get 15%, 10%, right? So again, it's just something that there are ways to really maximize the benefit the owner gets with profit sharing. And on top of that, companies like Human Interest, when we do that for an employer, when we're running scenarios, we'll automatically run the compliance test to see, okay, where are you going to succeed and where are you going to fail? And obviously, we don't want to do anything where you're going to fail that compliance test. So we're just going to make sure you get the most benefit. We're going to run this scenario, 10 times, and we'll find out where you get the most benefit, and that's the one we'll give you.
Cool. It's all very exciting. So let's switch gears here a little bit and talk a little bit about the regulations that have changed around it. So some of our listeners might be familiar with Secure Act 2.0, which was an addition to some previous legislation. It's changed a lot of things in the retirement planning landscape, but specific to 401ks. What are the new rules that are affected by that legislation, and where do you see it going from here?
Yeah, there's a lot. That's a pretty massive piece of legislation. But the biggest takeaway philosophically from that is the government wants small businesses to offer, the federal government wants small businesses to offer retirement plans. It's heavily incentivizing it. And they understand that the only way that retirement is even a thing in 40 years is if people are saving themselves. Like, I don't think Social Security is necessarily going away, but it's not enough for anybody to decide to put up their hands and say, I'm done, right? So that's why, again, fundamentally, the government's doing this. And how they're doing it is predominantly through tax credits. So, for example, if I've got 30 employees, let's say I do a match, I'm going to get up to $5,000. And we'll take another step back. Say I'm doing a match, and we're also going to do automatic enrollment, which is going to be required anyways by 2025. So we're doing all these things, right? I'm going to get a tax credit for up to $5,000. I'm sorry, that's actually $5,500 for 3 years to cover all the admin costs related, the billed admin costs related to the 401k plan. So, and most plans they're not going to cost that much. So you're getting 100% of the cost to set up and maintain the plan for 3 years back to you as an owner in the form of a tax credit.
Okay.
So that's 16.5 over 3 years. In addition, this is, I would say, a little bigger. And going back to the safe harbor thing, when there's a match set up, now I believe it's employees earning less than $100,000, if I remember correctly. You can fact check me on that. But any employees that you give a match to that are earning less than $100,000, you will get a tax credit equal to $1,000, or up to, I should say, up to $1,000, depending on how much you've given them in match. They're basically gonna coincide. You're gonna get that tax credit back as well. Over 3 years, and that's the magic number. It's all over 3 years. We're looking at, for 35 employee business, 35 employees, well over $100,000 in tax credits. The other thing about it is that all that money is also tax deductible. So you're getting a tax deduction and a tax credit. That doesn't happen in anything else when it
Yeah,
comes
that's a
to
big
taxes.
swing. I think that's one of the
Yeah.
big objections we get. We start to talk to a small business owner and they want to get a 401k plan. And then they start to get worried about the cost of it. So really trying to communicate the tax credits, the tax deductions, and all the benefit they're actually getting. And the administrative cost of 401k plan starts to be pretty insignificant if they understand that. So everything you talked about, that's with the federal government, federal taxes. Is there anything that New York State does or anything that New York State requires for a small business owner?
Yeah, New York State's jumped on like a mandate bandwagon here. So across the United States, the overall environment is there. I think it's 46 states with active or pending legislation, which either sets up and offers a state-sponsored retirement plan, which employers opt into, and then they remit contributions to every pay period. A lot of these states are requiring this. California, Illinois, Connecticut, New Jersey, Massachusetts, Maine, Colorado. It just goes. There's a big list of states that are requiring employees, and the threshold of that requirement. So there's actually an employee threshold is different for every state. California is down to 1 employee. So if you have 1 employee in California, you got to set up something. New Jersey, I think, is at 25, but their plan is to scale that down. Going back to New York, I want to give some perspective. New York does have legislation for a mandate in which any business with 10 or more employees, part-time, full-time, 10 or more employees, has to set up a retirement plan. Now, New York State doesn't have a deadline for this because New York, what they're doing is setting up that state-sponsored retirement plan, which will just be an IRA, so low limit, $6,000, I think, something like that. Very few investment options. And that once that's set up, they're going to give everyone 9 months to get in compliance. So the legislation is active right now. Technically, people should be looking at it, making decisions now, but just the deadline's not set yet on that.
So New York State is saying they're requiring a retirement plan be offered to employees, but it doesn't necessarily have to be a 401k plan, correct?
Correct.
So they could offer a SEP, simple or traditional IRA, and just have it available through payroll, and that would satisfy this need.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Now, one thing to note there is that it is going to be an automatic. And automatic enrollment is something that is, again, if you're in a business and you're looking at setting up retirement plans for the first time, get used to automatic enrollment because federally it has to be on the plan now. And automatic enrollment it also goes by like an opt-out retirement plan where employees are automatically put in the plan at a set percentage rate. As the employer, you can do as low as 3%. You can say, okay, I want all my employees enrolled at 3%. But there's an auto escalation feature, I believe, that has to be attached to that, if I recall correctly, of 1% every year. In order to avoid this, employees actually have to physically opt out of it. Mm-hmm. They have to go, into whatever portal there is and say, I'm not doing this. So that's going to apply to all New York State plans as well.
Okay. Yeah, that's a big deal. We say that all the time. If you can have forced savings, you're much more likely to do it. If you wait until you have the thought of, hey, I should log into that thing and actually set up a percentage, it's very hard to see people actually follow through on it, which is interesting, I think. Cool. So you mentioned a couple different things in there, but I'd like to circle back to some of the features and benefits available through a 401k. From my perspective, it seems like there's a growing trend of employers offering a Roth option inside the 401k, which I think is great. Are you seeing maybe statistics on this even? Is it more common now than it was 10 years ago, or where is that gone?
Frankly, the companies that I've worked for have all offered. It's almost been like non-optional. Roth is on the plan. So I don't have a lot of perspective there as far as outside the 2 companies I've worked for. It doesn't make sense for a record keeper to set up a plan that doesn't have Roth as an option on it. Okay. Like as an employer, I wouldn't consider that.
All right. I think that makes sense. I think it's a great option. And if I look at it as a financial planner, just having an after-tax vehicle that's available to people with a high limit makes a lot of sense. I think that's an awesome thing, especially for higher income earners that aren't able to contribute to a Roth IRA the normal way. I'll save my soapbox speech on all that, but I think it's a good feature.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. I personally use both, and there's huge benefits to both. Yeah, our for example, again, our platform, it's every plan has Roth on it, and people love it.
Yeah,
Like you
good.
said,
I think one of the benefits of the 401k gets more attention in the media now. I think with the legislation going through, more employees are starting to reevaluate what they have offered. The employers are starting to look at what they're offering their employees. So it seems like there's just more focus on it, which must lead to more people either switching plans or reevaluating. So, in your experience, what are the main concerns that somebody has when they look at switching from one plan to another? What's usually the pain point that they have?
so switching from one plan to another, like switching from like a simple to a 401k, is that what you mean?
Oh, I'm sorry. So if they're switching from one 401k provider to another 401k
Oh,
provider,
got it.
is there a pain point having to do with either service or fees or investment performance?
You got to be really careful because a lot of traditional 401k offerings out there, some of the old guard, the Transamerica's, John Hancock's, Nationwide's, you got to be careful because sometimes investments in those plans lock you down, lock you in. There's actually investment related fees to switching plans. So that you got to work around that. It's not to say it can't be done. You can't do it without getting hit with that, but you just got to be careful. So I would say that's the number one thing is just make sure you know your plan. Work with your financial advisor. Make sure you know the plan you're on now, because switching could be a little bit of a headache if you don't.
Mhm.
But other than that, switching a 401k, so long as payroll is fully integrated, really isn't all that complicated. At the end of the day, it's you're stopping the contributions to the existing plan, the incumbent, and you're turning them on at the same time for the new plan. So that's really all that, for all intents and purposes, the employees are going to experience. Outside, there is a blackout period. So I think it's 2 days max, 3 days max, where they can't change investments, they can't take distributions, things like that. And then the assets, the existing assets do transfer over. So there's going to be a period of time in which employees won't see those. But so
Mhm.
long as the communication is good and everyone knows what's going on and everyone's read the communications, that's a,
We've had that
that's a
before with
little bit of
the
roadblock.
blackout period where they can't see their money, so they log into whatever account it is and they see a $0 balance and they have
Yep.
that panic set in because
Yep.
understandably their life savings is not showing up on the website that it showed up on for decades. And a couple days later, it reappears somewhere else and they feel better. So it's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's the only thing that, again, the only two things is that the investments, you got to watch those, and then just letting everybody know
Okay.
this is what's going on. And blackout notices are a requirement legally. So we can help with that. Providers help with that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. We've seen a lot of people just missing the educational piece too. Maybe they've had a 401k somewhere for years. The investments are fine, the fees are reasonable, but they're not really getting any kind of education for their employees. So I know we do this, other advisors do this, but going in and doing like a workshop once a year where the employees can learn about their benefits, take advantage of them, or just being available for a call. A lot of times people just want to be able to pick up the phone and call a guy rather than Googling the answer, trying to figure out what's
Yeah.
going on with their investment options.
Yeah, totally. It's definitely lacking, especially in a lot of the small plans that exist. A lot of the small employers that are offering these plans for the first time, they don't have that resource a lot of times. So yeah, that's great. It's great that you guys do that.
Very good. Awesome. We appreciate your time. Any questions for me before we wrap this up?
No, this has been good. I think that at the end of the day, the information that's contained in this is extremely important for small businesses because, like I said, there's not a lot of resources out there, and quite frankly, the reason for that is that a lot of people can't make a ton of money helping small businesses, and it's so much more important because of that these sorts of things happen. So appreciate the work you're doing. Yeah, and as always, any questions, let me know. Happy to help.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you, Austin, for your time. We'll wrap it up here. This has been the Roadmap to Retirement podcast, and we'll talk to you next time.
Disclosure. Content here is for illustrative purposes and general information only. It is not legal, tax, or individualized financial advice, nor is it a recommendation to buy, sell, or hold any specific security or engage in any specific trading strategy. Results will vary. Past performance is no indication of future results or success. Market conditions change continuously. This commentary reflects the personal opinions, viewpoints, and analyses of Alexander Neri. It does not necessarily represent those of RFG Advisory, their clients, or their employees. This commentary should not be regarded as a description of advisory services provided by Alexander Neri or RFG Advisory or performance returns of any client. The views reflected in the commentary are subject to change at any time without notice. Advisory services offered by investment advisory representatives of RFG Advisory, a registered investment advisor. Alexander Neri and RFG Advisory are unaffiliated entities. Advisory services are only offered to clients or prospective clients where RFG Advisory and its representatives are properly licensed or exempt from licensure. No advisory services may be rendered by RFG Advisory unless a client agreement is in place.